Hi, this is Dr. Adams, and this is screencast 2 of 2 for Advanced Composition, Week 1. In the first screencast, I reviewed the definition of rhetoric and provided a foundation for what that term might mean to us this semester. Now I want to just pull out 3 more broad concepts that I think are implied or discussed in the reading. For this week, this is not a thorough summary because there was just too much information for me to recap it all. So you should still be reading and engaging with these chapters from our 3 textbooks closely this week. But I just want to hit on 3 key points. The first of which is that rhetoric is an art, and this kind of dovetails from our discussion of the definition of rhetoric. Rhetoric is not a science, and I think that sometimes when we learn something new, we like to approach it hoping that it'll give us some sort of accuracy, that there will be a scientific formula or a schema by which we can understand something and produce the right or correct answer or outcome. And rhetoric is just not like that. It's much more messy and subjective. So much like other art forms, ballet, sculpture, painting, music, this is something that doesn't have a right or wrong product. We can think about rhetorical production in terms of quality, in terms of effectiveness, but it's not going to fall into just being good or bad or right or wrong. And I think that that's a really important thing for you to kind of get your head wrapped around this semester, because rhetoric, because it's an art, takes a lot of practice, and that's what this semester-long course is allowing you to do. It gives you a lot of practice to define yourself as this artist. So you're going to be doing a lot of writing and producing different types of text in order to develop your skills and hone your artistic sensibility, get a feel for what's working, get a sense of what is fitting in a given rhetorical situation. By doing this, I'm really focusing in on what Crawley and Haughey describe on page 14 of the textbook. The authors write, "Rhetors who practice the ancient means of invention will soon find themselves supplied with more arguments than they can possibly use." So here, in this quotation, arguments refers to our available means. And what my hope is, my goal for you by the end of the semester, is that you will have done so much writing for this class, and you've done these invention exercises that are a precursor to our major compositions for the course. Those invention exercises really ask you to think about all of the possible ways you might work through the rhetorical problem that your essay is going to address. And so the goal is that you'll have so much practice that you will have a copious range of available means, and that you'll have many to choose from no matter what your rhetorical situation within this class and beyond this class in different contexts. So when we do these exercises and activities, it might feel a little bit like this for a while. There will be a certain rhythm to the exercises that we perform, and we're going to do them over and over again. And it might feel just a little bit like if you were doing sort of the back end training for a sport. You're only out on the field or out on the ice and performing once and again, but in order to get to that place of performing, you need to do a lot of training and building your muscles, so to speak. And there's a reason for that. In this painting, we see a depiction of ancient Athens and the university where students would go to learn intellectually, to pursue courses of study like rhetoric and philosophy and astronomy, for example. But also, as you can see over here in the side of the painting, these same students are also practicing wrestling. And in ancient Athens, this was how university was conducted, and this is what you did. You you developed your mind, but at the same time you developed your body, and it was the notion of the student and the artistry that one needed to develop. It was a holistic approach. It was development of the mind and development of the body. So this would be the equivalent of this would be us leaving our advanced composition course and then all going to a yoga studio and practicing yoga together. So we can kind of see the legacy in arts and university settings, this legacy of this ancient tradition, but it was a lot more integrated back then. So I think that that helps to sort of explain why these exercises seem so sort of formulaic and like training. So even though they are a sort of training, I want you to also keep in mind that these exercises and activities can be a lot of fun, and they can allow you to play and have enjoyment through your production of language. And when I think about someone enjoying language and playing with language, I often think of Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, just a wonderful example of play with language and creativity and thinking about sort of the boundaries and creative things that we can do with words. And so I want you to keep this in mind, that as we're doing our activities throughout the course of the semester, some will really enable you to be creative if you want to, or have some fun and have some play. And there's a place for that, and I think that that's really helpful and useful and contributes to that sense of your artistry. Okay. To wrap up, there's just one last key point that I want you to think about, and that is that rhetoric is not just about writing or speaking. It's really about communicating responsibly, and I think that this is something that, again, is highlighted throughout the readings for this week. Well, what does it mean to communicate responsibly? For one thing, rhetoric is being willing to listen, even if you do not agree with the other people who are speaking or who are writing. So I think sometimes we think of rhetoric as just producing ideas, getting them out on paper or out on a screen, or using our voice to get them out in public. It's you having an idea and pushing it out. But we have to remember that part of responsible rhetoric is being able to stop and to listen and to consider the opinions and ideas of those around you, and to really think about those and think about what they mean, and then respond in turn. Another concept of communicating responsibly is not shying away from this idea of disagreeing, not thinking that disagreeing is necessarily a sign of a problem or some sort of undesirable situation. As Crowley and Haughey explained, the ancients realized that humans are different from one another, they're unique, and so naturally we are going to have disagreement, and that's a natural thing, that's normal, and it can be very productive. And we use language purposefully and meaningfully and ethically to work with that disagreement. So I think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind this semester. It's also important to know and keep in mind that communicating responsibly means acknowledging that facts and ideas, things that we tend to sort of think of as being indisputable, are really tied to a network of interpretation or multiple networks of interpretation. I think that in ancient rhetorics there are some really good examples of this, how you can't necessarily just read something only one way or interpret text only one way, that there is lots of ways that you can interpret any text, and we really need to be attuned to that. And we are responsible when we take the time and effort as someone producing rhetoric to think ahead and to identify what sort of dominant beliefs are at play that might be called up or supported or challenged by what we are producing, what we're thinking. Okay. And finally, we need to be responsible as rhetors to think critically about what sway certain beliefs have over you and your audience when you communicate. And I think that these last 2 points are ones we'll practice quite a bit this semester when we are responding to a rhetorical situation through our writing, and putting our ideas into circulation and thinking about what are the underlying assumptions that enable us to think something makes sense, to think that something is logical or is the right way to think, or a certain um, idea we have about evaluating something, determining if something is worthwhile or good or bad or problematic. We have to really be investigators and think not only about the rhetorical situation that we're entering, but also what are our ideas based on, and are those ideas shared by our audience, and should they be shared, and should they be called to attention? So those are all quite a few big ideas there, but I think that they're important ones to consider. So one quick example is, let's say that you are someone who's producing a reality television show about Alaska. Well, if you are producing a reality television about Alaska, you might need to think about what the networks of interpretation are that would surround that television show. If it's a reality TV show, what are the associations that many TV watchers have with reality TV? What do they think about reality TV? What does it connote or denote to them? We might discuss the idea that reality TV doesn't seem realistic at all. It seems dramatic and sort of prescribed and fake. And if you're producing a reality TV show about this state, what does it mean that people have other associations potentially with other shows that are reality television programs that are about Alaska and depict Alaska in a certain way? So that would be part of those networks of interpretation we'd want to think about. And we might need to call to the fore and make visible some dominant beliefs that our audience might hold. Maybe our audience has a perception that Alaska is, you fill in the blank, is somewhere that's not really part of America, somewhere that is an exotic place. We'd have to sort of root that out and think about that. And then, as you're producing your piece of rhetoric, your reality television program, you could think about if you want your program to kind of fall in line with those beliefs, if you want your program to try to, say I'm doing something different, this is a different type of program, or maybe you would just shift and you would call upon other available means to fulfill whatever your purpose is. So you might decide to produce a documentary instead, because a documentary is something different and it kind of pulls up a different network of interpretation than a reality television program. So that's a really quick example, but hopefully you can think a little bit more about how these notions of rhetorical responsibility can really be pulled into any sort of rhetorical context that you're dealing with. Okay, those are the main points that I wanted to make sure I covered with you, but there is a lot more that is in these chapters, and I'm sure that you have some questions. I don't require you to post any questions, but if you do have any, especially because we don't have a class meeting on Tuesday, then I encourage you to post them. You can email me with questions, of course, but I did create a discussion board in our Blackboard account, and if you look on the left navigation bar over here, I added a questions button, and that questions button will take you right into this discussion board. And you can just click on the forum here, Questions for Dr. Adams, and if you have any questions, you can post them there either by signing your name or posting them anonymously. And this is a forum not for personal questions that have a kind of sensitive nature, but just more general questions that other students might likely have. And if you have a question about the material or about what we're doing, I bet other students do too. Okay, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.